As Dr. Stahl mentioned, I'm Fran Crochet from Nichols, and I'm going to be co-presenting this with Miss Suzanne. We want to thank you for coming this afternoon, and our goal and objective today, this afternoon, is to give you some strategies and ideas that you can take back to your classroom to help you with comprehension of the content area, expository texts that are aligned with Common Core as well. We have several strategies and ideas that we're going to go over, so we're going to be moving on at a quick pace. But please feel free at any time to stop us and ask us for questions, discussions, or comments.
Welcome, everyone. As Dr. Crochet said, I'm Suzanne Troxler. I am honored to be able to work with Dr. Crochet. We've worked as colleagues. I've been her student in her class. She has such a wealth of knowledge, so we're very lucky to hear her for today. As she said, it will move quickly. We have a lot of good things we want to give you, but she will, for her students, she will have all of this available. For Lafourche Parish students, I will have all of this available on the intranet as well. The green sheets that Dr. Stahl talked about for Lafourche employees, your green evaluation sheets for your CLUs, you only need to do one for the afternoon. So once you do one, and you can wait till the end, to evaluate the whole workshop. But once you do one, you don't need to take another one, and I'll compile those for your CLUs as we always do. So welcome, and I hope that we do, as Dr. Crochet said, give you some information that you can use and take back to your classroom. Okay, we're going to go ahead and get started. Okay, we're going to start with an anticipation guide. You may have used this in your classrooms. For our Nichols students, this may be something that you've seen. It is a content literacy strategy. So if you open up your folders, there is an anticipation guide in your folder. So let's go ahead and take that out now. I'm going to give you just a couple of minutes. We're not going to think long and hard about this, but I'm going to see what you know about this topic, and that's how we use an anticipation guide. We find out what students know before we get them 3 folders, please. Okay, thank you, baby. We find out what students know before we begin teaching a subject, how much they know about that subject. It's a great pre-assessment technique. And then students will reflect and evaluate what they've learned after either reading or after instruction. So I want you to think about the acronym TWIRL as it relates to literacy. I want you to just take a minute or so to tell me what you think each of those initials stand for. So I'll give you about a minute. They are related to literacy and instruction in the classroom. Each word will start with one of those initials. Ready? Go. Okay, you should be finishing up on your last thought. Remember, it's okay to make mistakes in the classroom. That is how we learn. We don't expect students to have all the answers on the beginning of an anticipation guide because we are just seeing how much they do know about a topic. We are seeing how much that they can show us, and then they will either revise or confirm their predictions about the topic. So let's go ahead now and flip to the next slide. All of these initials stand for a specific word as it relates to literacy. And it all has to do with engagement in the classroom. And I know you hear that word a lot. And with our new teacher evaluation, with Compass, we hear about active engagement. And we want to know, how do we get our kids actively engaged? And how do we keep that in a literate classroom every day, no matter what we're teaching? Whether it's PE, whether it's ag, whether it's ELA, math, whatever the topic, whatever the content. What we need to be doing every day to engage our students actively in the learning process is twirling. And that is by the teacher and the student every day. The first initial stands for talking. Talking needs to be purposeful in our classroom every day. We don't want just the teacher talking. We want students talking to each other. And I'll refer back to Compass a lot. When we talk about that higher level of engagement in our classroom and questioning in our classroom, we want those students interacting. We want them initiating questions and taking things to the next level. We want to become more of that facilitator. So we want talking between teachers and students, between students and students as well. That needs to happen every day. Also, the next letter is writing in some form or fashion. They need to be doing some type of writing every day on a regular basis. And this is all based on research from 2005 that talks about literacy in the classroom on a regular basis. In writing, it doesn't have to, we're not talking about, writing a research paper or anything like that, or necessarily a paragraph. some type of writing. Think about those strategies that we incorporate in our classroom for engagement. Jot thoughts. Many of you like that little simple strategy. Some type of writing every day, God bless you, in our classroom. The next letter is I, and it stands for investigating. And when I talk about investigating, Dr. Crochet will talk more about delving into the text and really seeing what's in that text. We're talking about investigating what they're working on. And as they create questions to ask to each other, to build upon. So they're being the investigators every day with you in the classroom. And we really want to focus on this as student-centered. Okay, of course you're leading that, but we want students to the point to where they can initiate those questions. They can investigate what they're doing and initiate from there. The next letter is R, and of course it's reading. You don't just want the teacher reading, but you do want them reading a little something. You want the students reading every day. And Dr. Crochet will talk about a great strategy that you'll use in the classroom where they read together. That needs to happen every day. And again, it's going to look different depending on what you're teaching, whether it's ag or whether it's math or science. And the last letter is listening. We can't have purposeful talk without listening, okay? We are going to create that classroom environment, that literate environment, where students are listening to each other. And not just hearing, but listening. You know, we talk a lot about they might hear me, but they're not listening, okay? We want that environment where the students are actually listening to each other so that they can create those questions and take it to that higher level that Common Core expects us to take it to now.
All right, in your packet, you have Bloom's question starters. They're adapted from the work of Lisa Porter. They look like this. You have them in white, and then you have them in yellow. And I borrowed this from another parish. I did not come up with this. I thought it was a wonderful, neat idea. And what they've done is they take the yellow cord and they cut it, and they punch a hole in it and put it on a little ring. This is for the student. And so we suggest that you provide this for your students. I want my students to generate the questions. I want my students to be engaged. Now, before I can get my students to do this on their own, what must I do as the teacher?
Model.
Model. I have to model. And as I model, I'm going to tell them, indicate which level of Bloom's we're working on with this type of text and why. I'm going to do these think alouds. I'm going to talk to them through the thinking process of why am I selecting these levels of Bloom's for this type of text, for the information I want to acquire and do something with. Eventually, I want my students to be able to do this, but they will never be able to do this if I do not thoroughly model and give them the explanation of what and why I'm doing. So these, I think, are wonderful. If you look, there's also in your folder a close, open-ended question. In your folder, you should have another
It's white,
sheet.
but you'll see it.
It's white, but it looks like this. It's like this. It should be something like this. You have it? Check it out. Let me see. What they did with this parish did was, again, they did it on a colored sheet. They laminated it, and they provided for the students. These are open-ended. What's the purpose of giving this to students? Why would I give this to them? What do I want them to do with these?
Generate their own questions.
You're right, exactly.
Exactly.
And you know, when we talk about, I'll refer back to Compass a lot because that, you know, we're thinking in that mode that we want to be that highly effective teacher in the classroom. And I know you can tell me, it's hard to get the kids to do that, to say that. Is that something that's just going to happen? No, you're going to have to practice that. It's going to be very deliberate in your classroom. That is going to be very practiced and purposeful to get the students to that level. We don't expect you to be there from the beginning. We have to get the students to that level where they can, these guides can help them initiate those questions.
Okay, the next thing that you do have is the white sheet that says creating questions for close analytic reading exemplars of Blue Sky. That's what these 1 through 5 and the next 5 through 7 are. I want to go over it quickly because we're going to do an activity with this. What this is recommending, and there's a longer available explanation of each of these steps, and it gives you the website at the bottom. This is a quick, condensed version of it. What we want to do is, we as the teachers are going to start off doing this. Okay, eventually having our students also assisting. So for number one, you will take a selection of expository text, your choice, what the school is telling you, what Common Core is suggesting, and you want to read it. And as I read it, I want to think about what is the most important thing that I want my students to take away from the text. From that, what's the culminating assignment? What do I want them to focus on? Number two, what key ideas should my students gain from this text? You decide prior to them reading it. You will create a series of questions. Eventually, who's going to create some of these questions? My students. 3, powerful academic vocabulary. You, and you're reading through the selection, what is the most powerful academic vocabulary that they have to have an understanding of, or they cannot comprehend this information? I select those words, and then from there I decide what will I do with these words to make sure that they acquire the knowledge. Number 4, what standards are being met while I'm doing this? What Common Core state standards am I meeting? As well as which other ones can I tie in that I could branch off with? Next slide. Number 5. I found out those that are most crucial, but then there may be some other academic words that I'm not necessarily going to teach. But as they go through it, I want to make sure they understand it. But it's not the level that I have to teach them, or the text doesn't do a fabulous job with context clues, but I do want to check and make sure that there is some comprehension with all of those vocabulary words as well. So from there, what kind of discussion, what kind of questions am I going to generate? 6. A lot of times with Common Core, what do we find out about the text and the complexity of the text at 5th grade, 6th grade, 7th grade? What's wrong with the text and my students?
Not their grade level. It's
Grade
not their reading level.
That's right.
It's not their reading level. It's too difficult. So maybe it is the way that it is written. It's the vocabulary. Maybe it is the sentence structure. I go through the text and find those elements that are going to cause my students the most difficulty in the sentence structure, the use of the vocabulary, the form in which it is written, the syntax. And I have to come up with, so how am I going to address this? What am I going to do to help my students to comprehend that? And number 7, so what do you want them to do with at the end of it? So they've read this, so what? What are you going to assess them on? What is that culminating activity going to be? Okay, in your packet, you have an article, informational text, history, social studies, United States Preamble and First Amendment to the United States Constitution. Take it out. This is what we're working on. Got it? Everybody have one of these? Yes? Okay, let's go back to number 1. Back up a slide, please. Okay. You need to read the preamble, and you need to read the First Amendment. And we're going to address it in 2 different steps, preamble and then First Amendment. Read the preamble, read the First Amendment, jot down, identify, what do you want them to know about it? What do you want middle school students to know about it? Go ahead. You have about a minute.